Happy New Year, sophomores. I'm glad to be seeing you. This is the first video that I'm recording in the new year, and so it might be a little rough because I'm coming off vacation. But I really do hope everybody had a wonderful break and that 2021 brings everybody much more happiness and joy than 2020. Today, we are going to be talking about research. As you can see, we are doing a research unit along with, we're also going to be doing, and you might have seen this already depending on how you organize your Canvas work, but we're also going to be doing poetry. And then of course we have grammar, which will start up next class. First thing we need to do when contemplating how to begin research is, of course, you need a topic to research. So we actually are going to start this year, the process this year, by creating ourselves a research question. And then the answer to that question will turn into your thesis or your main claim. Sorry, my phone. I should have silenced my phone. I apologize. Why do you need a research question? Okay, so research questions are going to help you focus your research by giving you a path through the writing process, through the research itself. Really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make your work more specific to help avoid a very general, broad, basic sort of all about paper. And I think it'll help create thesis better as well. For I do not intend to give you like a STEM question, not like a statement STEM for your thesis as we've done sometimes before. Now the good news is this year I already have a little bit of a starter that I want you to think about as we begin this research question process. This year, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the year, but it's been a really long time, and some of you weren't even with me at the beginning of the year, so I'm going to mention it again here at the beginning of this semester and try to be better about bringing it up more. But the question that the rest of the sophomore English 2 honors teachers and I talked about was this defining question that we could use to kind of help anchor ourselves in everything that we teach you this year. And that question is, how can we do better? And by we, I don't mean teachers, and by better, I don't mean at teaching you, although that is included, of course. What I mean is, how can we as humans do better in the world? So that's what I want you to think about when you start thinking about what it is that you might want to research. Because you'll see what I have next is to create a research question, and I've got some steps for you. And the first step is to choose an interesting general topic. So I say interesting, that's interesting to you. It's going to make this process a lot better if you're actually kind of interested in the answer to the question that you're asking. Now, a general topic might be something like slavery, or film, or medicine, or education, or whatever. But what you're keeping in mind is, how can we as humans do better in the world? So I want you to start by thinking about that question. And actually there's an activity that we've done, you might have done it already by the time you're watching this video, that is meant to kind of help think about things that are important to you in your life. That's the Your Life at a Glance activity. So you can use that to help guide you perhaps. But what we really want to do is think about things that are of interest to us. I'm sorry, I'm probably beating a dead horse at this point, but I really do want you to try to search for something that you think, because I mean, think about it. If it's something, because I'm going to ask you to find 10 sources, okay? 10. We're going to start with 10 and we're going to narrow down. So that's many times that you're going to have to go out there and look for information on a topic. Why not have it be something that you're actually interested in what all those things have to say, right? Some teachers put a lot of restrictions on these sorts of papers. They don't want to read anything about this particular controversial topic or whatever. I don't have anything like that. Really anything is allowed. I think the only thing that would catch my interest is if I saw something like overly violent or dangerous, I suppose. But even issues of violence are not off the table, assuming that doing better means to lessen the violence. So anyway, okay, so you start broad, just like we do in our introductory paragraphs. Even with your thinking, you're going to start broad and then get more specific. Okay, so when you find your overall general topic, you want to do a little bit of preliminary research, a couple quick Google searches, a couple quick periodicals or journals to see and make sure that you understand what's already been researched, because you don't want to be just giving, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but you don't want to be just giving specific, information that's already out there. You don't want to just write a research paper over common knowledge, I guess is what I'm going for. And also doing a little preliminary research will help you figure out what people, academics, and other intelligent, forward-thinking people in the world are already discussing about this. What's on everybody's mind? What questions occur to you that have not been answered yet as you read these articles? This step is the only place where I would allow you to kind of be on Wikipedia. You're not going to use Wikipedia as your any source for this particular paper and unit, but if you wanted to look at it to get some generic information here, you could. Okay, oops, sorry, you might recall in my videos that my lights turn off in my room if I don't move enough in certain areas, so that might happen again. Okay, now this is something I want you to consider when you're writing papers, but honestly, and that's consider your audience, but honestly, most of the time your audience is going to be academic in a school paper. If we get a chance, we might have an opportunity to write something for another audience, but for now it is going to be academic, and you want to make sure that your audience is interested in the question that you're developing. I'm going to be having you guys check with me ahead of time on your theses and your research questions. So if I find your topic to be so completely uninteresting that I think it would hinder your grade, I'll let you know, but that's unlikely. Okay, now you want to start asking yourself questions. Take into consideration the steps that you've already completed and start asking yourself these open-ended how and why questions to help narrow your topic down. The goal here is to start with the broad and ask yourself questions to get more and more and more narrow until you come across your research question. For example, if your general topic was slavery, and you were interested specifically in slavery in the American South, and then you started to ask yourself, okay, well, how did slavery end in the American South? So then you're talking about the abolishment of slavery in the American South. And then it's like, okay, not just how did it come about, but like specifically what sorts of tools were used to help the abolishment of slavery. And then you turn into, and I'm sorry, I'm going like this because the camera is right in front of my screen. Why were slave narratives effective tools in working towards the abolishment of slavery? And that would be a really decent, specific research question for you. That one doesn't fit into our overall category as well. We would probably want to be looking more at modern day slavery or human trafficking or something like that. We're not as much going into, it's not that we're not going to be historical at all, because of course in order to discuss a topic, you need to consider the history. But this is more of a historical focus, whereas we're focusing a little bit more current. But that still shows you the narrowing process. On my screen, there's a tiny delay between my voice and my mouth. Hopefully that's not a problem on your end. If it is, I'm sorry. Okay, after you've put your first question, after you put your first draft of your question together, you want to evaluate whether it is effective or not, or whether it needs to be revised, and you're going to use these guidelines in which to do so. So you want to make sure that it's clear, you want to make sure that it's focused, you want to make sure that it's, well, and by focused, you have to consider the length in which I'm going to give you to answer this question. And I am still trying to decide exactly whether I want to go a page number or more like a word number. But when you get that information, consider your question and whether it can actually be answered in the space provided for you. You may need to get more specific or more broad in order to fill the space that you need to fill. You want to make sure it's concise and yet complex. It often will begin with how or why. It shouldn't be answerable with a yes or no or by easily found facts. And it should be somewhat arguable. It should be at least somewhat open to debate. That will make it more interesting, of course. Okay, so here's some samples. An unclear one would be, how should social networking sites address the harm they cause? But we don't know specifically what social networking sites we're talking about or what kind of harm we're talking about. So a better, more clear question would be, what action should social networking sites like Facebook and MySpace, which of course we would probably update that because nobody uses MySpace anymore, and really y'all don't use Facebook much, so anyway, what should they take to protect users' personal information and privacy? This is an interesting one. This could fit into the category of how can we do better? How can we do better to protect privacy on social networking sites such as Snapchat and Twitter, right? Same idea. Okay, what is the effect on the environment from global warming? Okay, global warming is a little vague, and environment is vague. What is the most significant effect of glacial melting on the lives of penguins in Antarctica. Okay. That one is probably not going to allow for enough of an answer. I mean, it's definitely more focused, but it's not, like, I don't think that would be a very long paper. Okay, and then too simple would be how are doctors addressing diabetes in the United States? And then appropriately complex would be to upgrade that to what main environmental, behavioral, and genetic factors predict whether Americans will develop diabetes, and how can these sorry, again with my camera in the way, how can these commonalities be used to aid the medical community in prevention of the disease? Okay, I think you get the idea. So for today, your goal is to start thinking, going through all these steps essentially, and to create a research question and submit it on Canvas for approval. This will be a daily grade. It's going to be a pretty simple daily grade. You will pass this daily grade if you submit a question, but whether you get like a 70 or 80 or 90 or 100, which is the only grades I really intend on giving, will determine, how ready I think your question is. As you update your question, if I tell you you need to update your question, as you resubmit and update your question, I'm happy to change the grade as well. So let's see if I have anything else. Nope, that's it for right now. So email me if you have some questions, if I've left anything out. Yes, I know that I have not given you the research paper assignment sheet yet. We will probably talk about that next class. As for right now, we're just going to be thinking about topic. Although I understand that you need to know the length in order to adequately focus your question. So I will tell you that it's not going to be an unusually long or short paper. It shouldn't be anything different than what you're kind of used to. And I will do my best to narrow that down for you as soon as possible. Okay? So be thinking about like your rhetorical analysis essay that you guys turned in before the break. It's going to be about that long. Okay? I mean, it's going to be your standard intro, 3 body paragraphs, conclusion. One of those body paragraphs, which we will talk about this more next class, but one of those body paragraphs is going to be a concession and refutation paragraph. So you are going to need to consider the other side of the issue. And since that's going to be a requirement, you're going to want to pick an issue that has another side. For example, like most things have another side, but things like, I don't know, like drunk driving, I suppose. Like if you wanted to look up what we might be able to do as society to help drunk driving, you're going to have to narrow your counter argument because nobody is pro drunk driving. You might have people that are against or have different ideas than you about what we can do about it. But just be thinking of that as you're picking your topics and your research questions. Okay? All right, guys. I will check in with you next time. Email me any questions.